In the deepest unexplored reaches of a cave, a diver discovered a body. What terrified him even more was that not far away, there appeared to be a second body. As he slowly approached the one in the distance, the body suddenly lunged at him. The diver couldn't fend off the attack and was thrown into a state of absolute panic, his entire body frozen and unable to move. Would the diver manage to escape? And who exactly was this corpse that attacked him? On the 19th of July, 2014, at 10 a.m., a boat was anchored above the Arct's cave. Ricardo, Dionisio, and Javier completed their equipment checks and officially entered the water. Their fourth companion stayed on the boat as backup support, ready to respond to any emergencies. None of the three divers who entered the water held any specialized cave diving certification. They only had basic open water diving credentials. Before long, the three of them made their way into the tourist-accessible section of Arct's cave. This stretch of passage was wide and gently sloping. The rock walls were covered in textures carved by seawater erosion, along with stalactites. The three swam slowly along the walls until they reached the safety zone at a depth of 100 feet. This was also the officially designated boundary for recreational diving. Just 40 feet ahead lay a sharp right-angled turn at 140 feet inside the cave. Beyond that turn was completely uncharted territory that no human had ever explored. At this point, Javier used underwater hand signals to clearly communicate to Ricardo and Dionisio that he refused to go any deeper. He also let them know that he would wait in the safety zone for 20 minutes. If the two of them didn't return within that time, he would head back the way they came. After receiving Javier's message, Ricardo and Dionisio continued swimming forward, entering a region that no human had ever set foot in. As their legs kicked and their bodies moved through the water, they instantly stirred up the thick layer of silt on the bottom. In a matter of seconds, their entire field of vision was swallowed by murky water. They couldn't see the rock walls beside them or each other. The sudden loss of visibility threw both of them into immediate panic. Their breathing rates spiked dramatically. What had been calm, steady breathing turned rapid and chaotic, burning through the gas in their tanks at an alarming rate. Meanwhile, the passage width shrank from several meters down to less than 1 meter. At its narrowest point, it was only about 30 inches wide, barely enough for one person to squeeze through sideways. The two of them thrashed around in the passage, desperately searching for a way out. A guideline would have been their only life-saving tool, but they had never laid one. All they could do was keep searching blindly for any sense of direction inside the passage. Back in the safety zone, Javier had reached the agreed-upon 20-minute limit. Not only had he not seen his companions return, but he could see clouds of silt rising in the distance. He realized the two of them must be in serious trouble, but he had no cave diving rescue qualifications and no specialized equipment. Rushing in blindly wouldn't save them. It would only put himself in the same deadly situation. In the end, all he could do was turn back the way he came and surface to the boat. Once on board, Javier immediately called emergency services. Local police dispatched professional divers to the scene right away. While the rescue divers were on their way, Ricardo and Dionisio were deep inside the cave in a state of total despair. In the pitch-black environment, all they could do was swim around by feel, their bodies slamming repeatedly into the jagged rock walls on either side. In their frenzy, they used every ounce of strength to force themselves through that narrow rock passage. Just when both of them believed they were about to lose their lives, they made an unexpected discovery. Beyond the narrow passage was a massive open space. Even more astonishing, above them was an air pocket that broke the surface of the water. With their very last bit of energy, the two of them surfaced into the air pocket. They ripped off their masks and gasped for the air inside the chamber. The pocket was roughly 5 feet tall, with a total air volume of about 1,200 cubic feet. Under normal breathing rates, this was enough to sustain 2 adults for more than 24 hours. At the time, the two of them believed they had found a temporary refuge. They were momentarily free from the threat of drowning. They even used an underwater camera they had brought along to document what they thought was their lucky break. But this air pocket was a completely sealed space, entirely cut off from the outside atmosphere. There was zero air circulation. In such an enclosed environment, the two of them faced a serious risk of carbon dioxide poisoning. Ricardo was 63 years old at the time. The panic he had experienced in the narrow passage had not subsided, even after entering the air pocket. This caused the carbon dioxide levels in his body to build up at a dangerously accelerated rate. 7 hours after the two of them entered the chamber, the carbon dioxide concentration inside had climbed higher and higher. Ricardo suddenly suffered full body convulsions and then lost consciousness completely. His body slowly sank beneath the water. Dionisio immediately pulled Ricardo back up into the air pocket, but it wasn't long before Ricardo slipped below the surface again, this time even faster. Dionisio struggled once more to drag him back above the waterline. With the ice-cold seawater continuously deteriorating his physical condition, Dionisio simply didn't have the strength to keep this up for much longer. At the same time, the rescue team arrived on scene and officially began their descent into Arct's cave. Their primary objective was to lay a safety guideline through the completely silted out water to support the search and rescue operation that would follow. The rescue divers advanced slowly along the edges of the rock walls, laying guideline and marking the return path as they went. But when they reached the turn at 140 feet, they found that the silt inside the cave was still fully suspended in the water. Visibility was virtually zero. There was no way to determine the direction of the passage ahead. If they kept pushing forward blindly, the rescuers themselves would end up trapped. To prevent any casualties among the rescue team, the first group of divers had no choice but to abort their advance. They followed the guideline back to the surface. The first rescue attempt was called off. The following morning at 8 a.m., the search and rescue team descended into the cave once again. They followed the guideline and advanced steadily into the depths. An hour later, the team successfully passed through that narrow rock crevice and reached the underground lake at the far end of the cave. They immediately spotted Ricardo's body floating in the water. They also discovered the sealed air pocket above the lake, and Dionisio curled up against the rock wall inside the chamber. Dionisio had been trying to slow his oxygen consumption and reduce his carbon dioxide output. He could only keep his breathing as shallow and slow as possible. He stayed motionless, curled up against the rock wall, minimizing contact between his body and the freezing lake water to ease the symptoms of severe hypothermia. By this point, Dionisio had been trapped in the sealed air pocket for more than 24 hours. Carbon dioxide poisoning, hypothermia, and hypercapnia had caused severe mental confusion and hallucinations. He reacted with intense hostility toward the rescue divers who suddenly appeared. Dionisio not only refused to leave the air pocket, but even tried to attack the rescuers who approached him. He was completely uncooperative with the rescue effort. To prevent Dionisio from accidentally harming himself or others in his confused state, the rescue team immediately suspended their plan for a forced extraction. They went back to the surface and arranged for a trusted personal friend of Dionisio's, who held professional diving credentials, to come to the scene. This friend dove down to the air pocket, calmed Dionisio, and talked him through the situation. Only then did Dionisio gradually regain his composure and agree to cooperate with the rescue. At 3:42 p.m., Dionisio was successfully brought to the surface and rushed to the intensive care unit at a nearby hospital. One day later, rescue personnel successfully recovered Ricardo's body. This cave diving accident highlights two major problems. The first is that the group did not bring a guideline to navigate inside the cave. The second is that without adequate equipment and preparation, they recklessly explored an uncharted cave, which directly led to the tragedy. Cave diving is an extreme sport. Once an emergency occurs, the chances of making it out alive are incredibly slim. Nobody should ever attempt it casually.